This week's episode of Life Planning 101 originally aired in 2019. Please enjoy. Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services in Eastland, Texas. Tune in every week as we share important information to help you and your family live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, legacy and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
And welcome into Life Planning 101 right here on KETX 97.7, KWBY 98.5. It's a marvelous Monday morning, and we welcome in Angela Kennedy Robinson. She's joining us via telephone, and Aaron Kennedy in studio with us. Good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good Monday morning. And I'm saying cheers from the great town of San Antonio, Texas. Almost it's not a town anymore. But we do have an incredible show lined out. I am so excited, and I don't want to take up too much time because I know as we were fleshing out this show, answers a lot of questions that a lot of people have. I think everybody is always looking for what you call the secret sauce when it comes to investing. You know, you read all these publications that are out there, and you see headlines that say, you know, this type of investing, value investing is dead, or dividend stocks, the safe way to invest, or growth stocks, they can never be stopped. And, you know, the truth is that every single one of those headlines are illusory. None of them are true, and they're headlines for a reason. They're meant to grab your attention. And, you know, I think a lot of people have this question of, okay, well, if those are just meant to grab your attention, what is actually the truth? What will come out on top? Where do I need to be, and what do I need to be doing with my money? And, you know, that's, I think, a valid question we all want an answer to. And so I'm not going to dig into that question, but that's why we have our very own CFA, Aaron Kennedy, with us today that's going to be answering, you know, what will come out on top, or maybe not so much what will come out on top, but how can you come out on top when it comes to your investing. So, Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show with us this morning. I know you are extremely busy, especially with all the volatility that's going on in the markets and in the portfolios. So we appreciate you taking your time away from your research to join us, and just let us know what you're seeing and what we should be thinking, or how we should train our brains as these markets continue to get crazier and crazier as we move forward.
Well, you know, when it comes to investing, the market is a living, breathing entity. It is always changing, and we're going through not only economic cycles, but market cycles as a whole, and nothing ever stays the same. So, you know, when we look at probably the style of investing most people are most comfortable with is value investing. And if you go back to the beginning of time, you know, value investing is the number one way to invest. And if you're a value investor, you're usually buying companies that are on sale. They're cheaper compared to the market for the amount of earnings that they have or their book value. And just the basic premise of buying cheap, buying low, and then selling when it recovers or gets back to full price. But we've been going through this phenomenon over the last 10 years that growth has outperformed value so greatly that it is now the leading investment style since 1980. So it's changed the whole dynamics of the market. I guess another way to look at that, if you've been a growth investor since 1980, it's taken you 38 years to finally say, hey, see, look, I was right.
That would be tenacity if you hung in there that long.
Yes, but that's a great point. You know, usually where people get in trouble is they jump from one to the other, and it's always at the wrong time. So if you're a value investor, you like maybe slower moving stocks, things that are already beat up. So if we go through a downturn, you know, that stock doesn't have as much to get beat up, so they can be looked at as a little bit less volatile. But when do you usually get in those? And that's after they've had a huge run. You know, when do you get into growth? After that's had a huge run. So you're missing out on the best part, which is the beginning of the move. And that comes back to discipline. If you weren't already there and you didn't believe in what you were doing and you didn't have your risk right, then you made your change, you sold out of what wasn't working and bought what already has been working. So it gets a lot of people into trouble.
Yeah, and I think there's something to that, because I think we forget what the market actually is. People, and we get this all the time of, I just invest in the market, it's just like Vegas money, right? And they think of it as some fancy, imaginative world that, money grows on trees and then it falls off just fast. But that's not the reality of what the market really is made up of. And, if you think about it, it's companies that we use as consumers every day. And so we forget about the simple supply and demand rules and why are these things actually doing what they're doing in the market.
That's exactly right. A stock goes up because people are buying it, and a stock goes down because people are selling it. So, a good point of this is if you have a value stock, if you have the greatest company in the world, and you buy it dirt cheap, and it's earning money out the wazoo, it doesn't matter. The price won't change until somebody else believes your story, believes, hey, yeah, this stock is underpriced. And once everybody else jumps on that bandwagon, then they start buying it, and then it takes off. But, if you don't have the patience to sit there and wait on that stock or that market, and you give up on it before the rest of the people buying or the entire market realize this mistake, you missed out. So
right. I love your quote you said when we did our article this week. I actually used it because I thought this is phenomenal. You said everything has its day in the sun, but most people don't find it till night.
That's exactly right.
And I think it goes back to, how many times as we as investors talk to our neighbors about, hey, this is what we're doing. What are you doing? This is what I'm doing. What are you doing?
Yes.
And, you're chasing something that's not real.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think you've talked about this on the show before about the sequence of returns. If you buy a company or a country or anything like that, and you've been watching a stock and it's doubled in a year, and then you jump into it, well, that stock might not do anything for the next 6 years. But, over a 10-year period, it's still averaged market returns. But you missed out on all the good stuff. And why did you miss out? Either you didn't see it, or it got a little volatile beforehand and you gave up on it, or maybe your neighbor didn't know and he didn't tell you about it.
And there's probably been a lot of that here recently. The volatility and people panic and get out, and no matter what you advise them to do or try to, but it's a reality that people do not like risk a lot of times.
No. And, so often, you hear, hey, look at this stock. This is what it's done for me recently. You need to do it. That's backwards thinking. It should be more of, hey, look at this stock. Look how cheap it just got in the last 2 weeks or the last 2 months. Look at it now. Now it's at a good price, and this is what it does. But it's
so in other words, when you hear a headline such as 3 growth stocks that can't be stopped, you probably need to rethink what you're reading. Find something that says cheap stocks on sale.
Yes, for the most part. And even great growth stories have, blips in their history.
Sure.
So.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, Aaron, and when we come back, I know you've got a lot of other great things as well as, and no one's going to want to miss, what is the actual secret sauce to investing? Right here on Life Planning 101.
And welcome back in Life Planning 101 right here on KTX, KWBY. Angela and Aaron with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning again, and we're talking about which stocks are actually going to come out on top. And, a better question in my mind is how can you come out on top when it comes to your investing and it comes to what your investments are meant for. And, we do want to definitely get into some of the strategies that we're using, but I do know, people have a lot of concern about what's going on right now. We have some crazy politics. We talk about this all the time about how divided our country feels at the moment. And, Aaron, how does this play into, what people need to be thinking about when they're thinking about their investments right now?
Oh, what a great question. Back through the history of the market, politics plays almost zero part in what's going on. It's a lot of noise. And if you turn on the TV or the radio or look at the internet, that's all you see right now. And it is just so much noise. And it just brings people down. It makes people upset. It makes you question everything you do. And that's what it's designed to do, like you said, grab your attention and make you feel something. But, if you think about it from a broad scope, every leader of these companies out there, all the CEOs, the CFOs, the CIOs, they probably like their job. They're probably making multi-million dollars running these businesses. And these businesses that they own are owned by us. If you're a stockholder, you own that business. And those CEOs or the leaders of those companies are going to do whatever they can to make the best decision and to make the most money for the company that they run. And, I could sit down with any CEO up there and say, hey, do you want to lose your job because Trump is in office? And his answer would be no. I said, what about Obama? Were you willing to give up your job then? No. So they want to do the best for their company. They have to. They have to provide for their family, have to do everything. They're going to make any decision they can, and they're going to wade through the muddy waters and figure out a way around all the noise and everything else. They're still going to continue to grow this company. And if you look at things like tax cuts and regulation cuts, it gets priced into the stock so fast, the market just continues to take off after that.
Right. That's a great way of thinking about it. Kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that, people forget that the market isn't something where money's growing on trees and it just falls off and, grows back. And no, it's not that. These are companies. These are things that we are using every day as consumers, and we're buying, and we're, it's part of our life. And just like if you own your own business, you're going to run your business the way you need to run it, no matter what the politics are. You're going to run it to make it successful. And we forget that. What a great analogy. That is awesome, because that is so true. And we stare at that news and we let it get control of our emotions. And then we're making these emotional decisions. I remember, and of course I wasn't around, and you could probably allude to this more, but this is a story we talk about all the time. Back in 1999 and 2000, we have, of course, what was the tech bubble, right? And everybody knows what that was about. And I remember, the fact that you and Dad had sat down with all of those people that had been dictating to you, this is how I want to invest my money, and they were investing it in that whole, this is what's hot, this is what's exciting right now. And, you sat down and you said, we're not going to do this anymore. We need to break the old leaf and either shake hands and be friends and part ways, or this is the way we're going to do things. And we're going to use this way of investing and this way of investing only. And what that way of investing is what we call our secret sauce, right?
Yes, that is our discipline.
Yeah, and I think, because it's not only painful, and I think as an advisor, we've watched this time and time again. We watched it back in 08, 09. We begged people not to pull money out of the market at the wrong time and, take those losses. And you are so emotionally attached to your money that, you've got to have someone that you can trust to take you through those times and help you think logically about what is really going on, and is the world really coming to an end, or is it not?
That's always the question. Is the world coming to an end?
And if it is, hey, amen.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what the price of Apple is. If it's over, it's over.
That's right.
It's time to quit worrying
You
about
can't
the
take
little
it with
stuff.
you, right?
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, why is it that people want something, fancy, the latest and greatest, what is working in the market? Why is it that we do that as people? It's just like being in high school again. We all want to be with the popular kids, right?
That's exactly
Why
right.
do we do that?
All of our emotions, almost all the decisions that we make are either out of fear or greed. And once we flip that switch in our mind, going from fear to greed, it's usually the wrong time.
Right.
And if you want a secret sauce out there, it's being able to not really foretell the future and say, hey, this is when I need to get fearful or this is where I need to get greedy. It's more about, hey, I have these emotions, and these are emotions in my brain that have been there for a millennium, and they're designed to keep me alive. But they're the opposite reaction that I need to take when it comes to my money. These fears and greeds will destroy me when it comes to investing, and I need to realize that and recognize it.
Right. The greatest investor of all time, allegedly, Warren Buffett, says, we buy fear and sell greed.
That's exactly right.
And I think that's awesome. Aaron, I got a question for you. So obviously, when you manage money, you're managing money, and you know the people that you're managing it for, and you're emotionally attached to them because they're like grandmothers and grandfathers and aunts and uncles and everybody else. How do you keep your emotions at bay when you start to get fearful or greedy?
That's a great question. It's not very easy. It gets very emotional, especially when phone calls start coming in and that kind of thing. But we model out so much, and we're not only just looking at stock models, but we're looking at economic models, and then once, a good way to look at the thing is if you're looking at a chart, back that chart off just a little bit. If you're looking at a 1-year chart and just scared to death and you're almost in tears, why not back it out to 10 years or 20 years? And then you say, oh, this has happened before, and look how much higher we are now to then. And I remember being in the chair that day, and I remember how bad that day was in the market, and we got past it. I remember how bad that day in the economic world was, and we got past it. Those emotions that we experience are today, or this week, or this month. It can drag out, but we got to remember, we're not investing for that. We are living for our entire life, and one bad month isn't going to hurt us. One bad year is not going to hurt us. One bad decision can hurt us.
Good stuff.
We got to remember that.
We need to take another break.
All right. Well, more right here when we come back on Life Planning 101.
And we're back. Final segment, Life Planning 101. Let's get right to it.
Yes. And we are so excited to have our very own CFA on with us today talking about these markets. And isn't it about time? We've had so much chaos and so much volatility. And, every publication you read is telling you what is the next best thing, what is the best thing, what's dead in the water. And, Aaron's here to clear all of that up, to bring it back to reality and give you what we've been waiting for the entire show, that secret sauce to investing. And I know, Aaron, this is something that you have employed. It's a strategy that has been in place in our firm for, oh my gosh, you think about 20 years now. So what is it? What is it that will help people be able to, not only where their stocks are going to come out on top, but how can they come out on top, with this crazy world called investing?
The best way to, come out on top over a lifetime of investing is to, really understand yourself and get your risk right in your portfolio. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. If you can't handle the ups or you can't handle the downs, you're going to be making decisions, and they're going to be poor ones. So the very first step into getting lifetime returns that you deserve is to get your risk right and get your expectations correct. And then we can really look at how the market works and what you should do in the market during these crazy cyclical times of the ups and downs.
Yeah, you know what's amazing to me about you, Aaron, is that here you are, a CFA, and you could talk so much alphabet, crazy words that no one on this show would be able to understand you. You're so technical. But yet at the end of the day, what makes you so awesome is that you realize that, none of that matters if you don't have the right mindset when it comes to your investing, because at the end of the day, human emotion is so much more powerful than any strategy that can be put in place.
There's the secret sauce right there.
Yeah, we always talk about, oh my gosh, you got to have discipline. You got to have a process in place. You got to have an investment plan to support your income needs, right? People forget that. How are you going to get paid in retirement? How are you going to get that income out of there? And you got to have a plan for that. Future, goals, family dynamics. We forget about having adult kids or parents that we're having to take care of, and how's that going to affect your investment? How are you going to be proactive rather than reactive in your investment management? I think that's powerful. That needs to be always something that you look at. How often should you be looking at your portfolio? And if you don't have answers to those things, you need to have answers to those things. But still, none of that's going to work if you can't get your risk right and keep your emotions at bay.
There it is. That is perfect.
There it is. Yeah. So, how do you come out on top? I think it's real simple. You come out on top when you find the right risk, right? And I'm asking for confirmation. You find the right risk. You get your disciplines in place with a strategy to support your income, your needs, your future, everything else. And you have someone there that when all of that goes to the pot, you've got someone to help hold you up.
That's right. You need to have someone there to hold your hand when it's great and hold your hand when it's not so great.
That's exactly right. That's why I don't look at my portfolio the last couple of months. I just make sure my brother's looking at it. Yeah, well, we truly appreciate all of our listeners every week on Life Planning 101. Wish you the very best, and as we leave January, we hope the rest of your year is absolutely wonderful, and God bless each and every one of you. And make sure if you have, an investment plan, don't have an investment plan to support your needs, maybe you take a look at it and make sure that everything is set up right so that when we do go through a next volatility moment in the market, which we will, you're ready for it. You're ready for it to protect you from yourself, to protect you from what is to come, that's inevitable, greed or fear. My name is Angela Robinson, joined by Aaron Kennedy of Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland, Texas. God bless you and have a great week.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Smart Money Group and Kennedy Financial Services. If you have questions, you can email them to lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. Don't forget to learn how our sister company can assist you with all of your tax and consulting needs. You can find out more at briscoeandassociates.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more Life Planning 101. The opinions expressed herein are those of the firm and are subject to change without notice. The opinions referenced are as of the date of publication and are subject to change due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass. Any opinions, projections, or forward-looking statements expressed herein are solely those of the author, may differ from the views or opinions expressed by other areas of the firm, and are only for general informational purposes as of the date indicated. Securities offered through Calton & Associates Incorporated, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Smart Money Group LLC. Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by Calton & Associates Incorporated.